Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. I'm Rob,
I'm Randy.
and we have a special guest with us today. We have Mr. Rob Wilson, author of, is it Check Your Engine
Check
Light?
engine light.
Check
Check
engine light.
Engine Light. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I already fucked it up. Good job. So, appreciate you coming on the show. I know, already off the rip.
All good.
Unprofessional as hell. That's my bad. But thank you for coming on the show today. I do appreciate it. Before we get started, if you don't mind, could you give everybody kind of your background and kind of, what you do, martial arts experience, things of that nature, kind of like what led you up to this point now.
Yeah, sure. I'm a human performance coach. So most technically, strength and conditioning. I have a background in manual therapy, so I've done all kinds of work in pain relief, return to play, and then the performance side of the house, strength and conditioning, agility, developing speed, flexibility, all that kind of normal jazz you would associate with physical training. I've been organizing physical training for sort of every tier of athlete you could imagine for a long time. I've been in the business about 25 years. Currently, my primary population that I work with is the special operations community. So I teach health and performance as part of a curriculum designed for operators, and that's what my book came from. And then also I work with some elite level grapplers as well, mostly via standard jiu-jitsu. So you guys mentioned before we went on the air, Greg Souter. So I work with standard jiu-jitsu quite a bit, helping with strength and conditioning, just sort of general performance and injury. I don't want to say injury prevention, but injury mitigation would probably be a better phrase. So that's sort of like the Cliff Notes version of what I do.
Cool. Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. No, that's awesome. Like I know, especially with the special operations community, because I know they did there's a push a while back for like a lot of the human performance stuff, especially with a lot of the guys getting overworked, overtraining, things of that nature. Like it was like a detriment to them at a point as well. And then, but also, you're working at teaching or sorry, helping out the grapplers. And you're a
Mm-hmm.
grappler yourself too, right?
I am. Yeah, that's what part of your question I failed to answer. So,
No, you're good, man. No
yeah,
worries.
my martial arts background. I've been doing martial arts of some kind or another since I was a little kid. Started with like Chuck Norris karate when I was very small, and then quickly moved to judo. So I was a judo player from maybe the time I was 7 until 13. Wrestled a little bit, just a couple of years of wrestling, then got heavy into Muay Thai. So I did Muay Thai all through my teens, along with like Jeet Kune Do concepts, some Wing Chun, some Filipino style stick and knife stuff. So like Kali Silat. And then when I was about 20, I moved away from it. Basically, my parents were like, "You're a grown man. We're not paying for you to do martial arts anymore." And I was like, "Okay, I get it." So I stopped, got heavy into CrossFit, owned a CrossFit gym. And then 8 years ago, I got to a point where my daughter was old enough where she really didn't want to hang out with me that much anymore. And I was like, well, I got a little more time and I got a little more money. What do I want to do? And I'm like, man, I miss being on the mat. And so I went back to jujitsu. I went to back to martial arts and did jujitsu. And literally as soon as I walked in the door and I could smell the musty, and like I'm not trying to say anything bad on my school, but it just smells like sweat if you go into a place where people sweat a lot. And as soon as I was in there, it was like instant, oh man, I know this. And I felt great. Like I put on a gi. Like it was funny. I still remember how to tie a belt. So I like could tie a belt. I was like, yeah. And I went on and I still got my ass kicked. Even though because I just didn't know the language, I was comfortable touching, but I went back to jujitsu and then I've been pretty much addicted, um, hopelessly since that point. And I'm still training, three days a week minimum, now.
Nice. And with I did laugh a little bit because, like that musty smell you talk about, like that's a very much
It's a
if you
thing.
grappled before. Yeah. And you
It's
just,
a thing. It's just how the room smells. You just can't.
yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. It's just how it is. I went to Italy to teach, and a friend of mine who's from the town where I was like, "Hey man, I'm trying to get some training in while I'm here." And he was like, "Oh, I know the place. You go in there." And I walked in the door like nobody spoke English, but I could like just as soon as I walked in, I was like, as long as I'm not a dick and I
Mhm.
train hard, I'll get along with everybody. It'll be fine. And the one guy who did speak English, luckily, was the instructor, who had been on the Italian Olympic judo team, which so it was great. It was great training. But yeah, it was like I felt out of place. And then as soon as I walked into the training area and that smell hit me, I was like, okay, I know how to behave here. So everything's going to be all right.
There's definitely something to that. Like, you travel to the other gyms and you go in. I always get a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious going to a gym I've never trained at before somewhere else, like out of town, because you don't know what to expect. And there's something about that culture when you walk in and you're immersed with the people and you just walk in the gym, like you said, the smells, the sights, the mats, it just automatically turns to calm as soon as the training starts. There's something to that.
Yeah, it's a real honest, it's a grappling environment's a real honest environment. You can't really fake it. You can
Yep.
fake it until you touch,
Yep.
and then it's all real. And that's one of the reasons I like it. I like it so much. So yeah, I definitely now in retrospect, I'm like, damn, I wish I would have kept wrestling,
Yeah.
and then picked up jujitsu when I was like 23 or 24,
hmm
when I still had all my joint integrity.
Oh,
But yeah, it's
100%.
great. I love it. Hopelessly addicted.
I read in your book, in the beginning of your book, I was telling other Rob. I feel like we have a lot of Robs on this podcast. I feel like Rob's doing this on purpose so he can battle for the Rob title. But um,
He can
so
have it. He can have it. He's cooler than I am by far.
But reading in your book, I saw that you're also from Buffalo, New York, which I'm from Buffalo, so I found that ironic. I saw a lot of parallels in the book. Your journey through martial arts. I trained in a lot of the same systems, and had a lot of the same experiences. So that's pretty cool. Uh, so
Another Buffalonian.
go Bills
Yeah, you're a Bills guy. Of
all
course
the
you
way.
are. Sabres.
Yeah, they suck right now though.
You see, it's all when they're good. It's all when they're good. I
You
don't
have,
watch any of it.
yeah, oh man.
I don't watch any football. I moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia when I was like 6,
Hmm.
but like I still have a lot of family in Buffalo. It's all Bills all the time. I just went to visit my grandma for her 90th birthday. I got in the
Hmm.
airport and I was like, man, I forgot. My sister got off the plane. She was like, Bill's Mafia is for real.
Oh yeah.
It's like
Mhm.
everybody's wearing Bill stuff. There's Bill stuff all over the airport. You get out of the airports, Bill's flags, Bill stuff on the cars, on the billboards is everywhere. And I was like, holy shit, this is a football town. I
Oh
forgot.
yeah. Yeah, big time. I haven't been back in a couple of years. I need to go back again, but yeah, it's definitely all Bills. But so your book, yeah, and I was telling Rob a little bit of, more about it because I am almost through it, man. I think it's incredible. I think the concept behind it is absolutely freaking brilliant. Because Rob and I work full-time jobs and then try to balance that with the demands of jiu-jitsu, the demands of physical fitness. I work in law enforcement, um, and so for me, there's some demands there that I have to deal with as well. And sometimes a job brings it out of you. I just had to fight two dudes the other day at work, and then I went to jiu-jitsu after, and it's just like, okay. So trying to balance those worlds can be tough on the body and the mind. And I really, really, really love how your book kind of brings it all together instead of having to like go and find one thing on mental health, one thing on physical health, flexibility, recovery. It's a one-stop shop, but I also love how it's personalized. Like I can come up with my own protocol to help me
Mm-hmm.
track where I'm at. And so I wanted to see if you want to delve a little bit into kind of that general concept for the listeners, because I definitely want everybody to pick the book up, but I want to give some people a place to start or at least start considering this because I think it's a really, really brilliant concept.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, I mean, So there's a lot to unpack with that, and the idea behind the book ultimately is learning how to pay attention to signals from your body and your mind, right? Like what's going on in here that tells me, hey, something might require maintenance. Just kind of lets me know like what's the current condition of the system. And the terminology I use is like a dashboard in a car, right? And what happens a lot of times with people, especially people who are tougher in disposition, is you just get forward focused, right? It just becomes about what's the next thing I need to do, or it can become about just whatever sort of habit system I've developed. I'm just moving forward and I'm not even noticing. I can't even distinguish the signs that are saying, hey, man, you're trending towards something you might not want. And so building a dashboard means having some indicators that make sense to you that lets you know where you stand. And that might mean something as simple as some kind of movement system that you do, some kind of movement sequence that you do that's separate from the jujitsu environment, for example, that lets you know, like, man, my shoulder feels a little off today. And it doesn't mean uh, do or don't do jujitsu, but how you do jujitsu that day might change. How you communicate with your training partner, who you choose to roll with, the intensity, how many rounds. So understanding what's going on with your body might not mean like, oh, I have this little thing going on. Don't do the stuff I like. It just means the approach I take can be more nuanced. And regarding individuality, I think it has to be individual by nature. Even if you're delivered a protocol, what everyone ends up doing anyway is tweaking it for the demands of their life because you have to. I like to start there because I don't have all the answers. So it doesn't even matter as a coach. For me, I don't know your experience. Even if you tell me it's not the same thing as you living in your own experience. And so what I have to do is try to provide you with tools that you can practice. And then we can have a dialogue if I'm working with somebody individually, or you have a dialogue with yourself. You learn how to self reflect. What are the measurements that I need to do? And that's essentially just developing skill, right? If you do the same thing in jujitsu, your coach might show you some armbar or something, and then you go, okay, I'm going to try this. And then what do you have to do over time? You have to change the exact way that you do it based on your body, what kind of condition you're in, your level of experience, who your training partner is, how tired you are that moment. Are they slippery? Is it gi? Is it no gi? So you have to modify all those things for you. But there are some things that will be stable across time, and your ability to practice that and reflect on what happened is actually the skill development process. And I just wanted to bring that out to the broader idea of sustaining performance over time, right? So it's not just about how well can I do today, but what are the things under the surface that will keep me doing well for as long as I can. And for the sake of, what we're interested in, that's staying on the mat. So what are the things that are going to keep me on the mat? That's what I train to personally now. That's my North Star. Stay on the mat. So any strength and conditioning I do, everything else is what keeps me doing this thing I enjoy so much. And when you have a North Star like that, then you can build all these little systems around it, right? What's my attitude today? Am I actually tired? Am I getting enough sleep? All those kind of little things, but they all serve not just do well tomorrow against this one guy, but stay on the mat because that's actually the core piece of progress. Maybe that was a long answer, but
No, that's do you is there I gotta ask this and it kind of skips ahead a little bit and we'll bring it back, but it just because it's on my mind right now. Is it by intention and design, or is it just coincidence that the philosophy behind this in terms of individuality matches so well with the way that they train at standard jiu-jitsu with constraints-led approach, ecological dynamics, because it's kind of very similar in the way I'm packaging it in my brain right now. The way you talked about an armbar, like you learn an armbar in jiu-jitsu in a typical class, and it's very, unless they've kind of adopted some of these different frameworks, is very direct. It's very specific. And then you have to make adaptations over the course of your jiu-jitsu journey to make that work for you. And that's just the way it is. But it seems like that matches up so well if you look at the way that Greg runs his practice and the way I do the same thing in my Friday class. I run it very similar to that. Um, the way that that all works in line with your book and the way that your protocols work and how it's like, hey, look, yeah, sure, I can give you some ideas of how some of these things may work, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to live it yourself and apply it in your lifestyle and make tweaks and adjustments to make it fit for you. Is that by intention or design, or is that just coincidence?
I mean, it's coincidence in that I didn't like consult with Greg about how I should do it. That's certainly my approach. That was the way that I approach strength and conditioning and performance anyway. And it's why Greg and I get along so well, right? We've been working together for quite some time. I mean, he's definitely somebody I work with a lot. So he's a close colleague, but also like a close personal friend. So this might be the point in the podcast where everybody turns me off. Just kidding. But he really is like one of my favorite people. We have for sure influenced one another greatly. I've taken a lot of influence from him recently, especially in my approach to jujitsu. But there are some core concepts there around adult learning and skill development that supersede by long both of our experience and application. Things like self-determination theory, right? So we know that, for example, adult learners sustain behavior change better when they have ownership over the process. When you decide what it is that you want to do and then you pursue it according to your own needs. We know that specifically in adult learning that's more effective. So for me, the experiments that are in the book in this sort of experimental style is based on my experience working with athletes. One thing you learn as you coach for a long time is that you don't know what the outcomes are going to be. It's very uncertain how things are going to turn out with any individual in any situation because there's so many unknowns, even if you're very experienced. And so what you end up learning is, at least for me, was that coaching becomes about managing uncertainty, right? So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to try to manage these variables as best as possible. And then making sense out of what happens and what we think needs to happen in order to get the outcomes we want. And that's an experimental framework. I'm not really sure. Here's what I think could happen based on the information that I have. Let's try it. So even when I was coaching like weightlifting, or CrossFit, there were some times when I would think, okay, this cue is going to work for this athlete to get them to move in a more efficient way. And they would say like, oh, I don't really know if I could do it like that. And I'm like, well, I don't either. Let's find out together. So I'm not somebody who thinks I have all the information. And so that idea of experimentation is very intuitive to me. And that's why I gravitated towards Greg's approach so much. Hope that answers the question.
It does. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think kind of going back to what you were talking about with kind of what keeps you on the mat being the North Star, like I need to stay on the mat type stuff like that. It's, I've always joked around and talked about like the worst thing I think I've ever done for my jujitsu journey was in the beginning ignore all the, like, hey, my shoulder's fine. I could just not tap to this Kimura and everything's going to be fine. Like my shoulder will handle it. I'm 23. What's the worst that could happen? And now like I'm paying for it later in life. What I guess maybe also I'm trying to get to also to talk about is like the recovery stuff as well, as far as that balance. Now, I need to still read your book. I apologize. Randy said it's amazing, and I agree. Like from what I'm hearing so far, I gotta actually take a look at this. Um, for somebody who's, maybe a bit up there in age, got some old injuries and stuff, like what's a typical balance kind of look like as far as maybe exercise recovery training, whatever you say, like you said, whatever is going to keep you on the mat, keep training or whatever, like where would you kind of start looking in that aspect?
Well, so I'll give you a couple things. So first of all, there's nothing that's for free. And so it's not like there's some perfect recovery protocol that will make jujitsu not hard on your body. Like grappling is hard. And what I always say is that what makes grappling in particular difficult is that it's not only the thing that we use to play the game, it's the field we play the game on. Right. And so our job is literally to attack each other's joints and then put them in the position where we can break them and do it in a way that causes the other person to quit. That's the game we play. I hold you still while I break your stuff or choke you unconscious. There's no way that that's not going to have a cost. It's going to have a cost, no matter how good of a job you do. And I think that's important. And that's why grapplers are so tough. There is going to be some ignoring of pain. There's going to be some ignoring of discomfort. I'll tell you what, man, sitting here on this podcast right now, my traps are blown up. I'm not in pain, but they're just sore, basically from the base of my skull to the points of my shoulders to my mid back. And that's because yesterday we wrestled a ton. And if you head fight for 12 minutes, your neck's going to get sore. If you don't want that stuff to happen, then you got to take up knitting. Like this might not be the sport for you. Right. So I always like to say that first, because I don't have like a utopic solution for jujitsu being not hard on the body. And I would never want to present it that way. And I think that's how sometimes people in human performance present recovery. Like if you do this perfect sleep, boy, just everything's going to feel great all the time. And that's horseshit. However, you'll be able to sustain the demands and perform well and continue to enjoy what you like much longer if you handle some staples. And I think those staples are stress management. And that's total stress management. That means, how are all the things from life hitting me? Jiu-jitsu doesn't live in a bucket that's separate from work, that's separate from your family, that's separate from your money. It's all one thing, all draws from the same bank account, and that's you. And you have to know that, first of all. So when you're talking about managing training load or managing stress load, that means being aware of the total effect of stress on mind and body. And that could be like, I'm fatigued more than normal, but it could also be like, man, I'm distracted today. Like, I notice I'm distracted. How am I going to address this? I'm already here on the mat. How am I going to address this today? Am I going to play a different game? Maybe I'll play a little bit more like a deep half safety guy game where I'm not going to be in scrambles, where if I lose attention for a second, I'm in real trouble, right? So it can be about that. So stress management is really important, because knowing where the money in the bank account is going is essential just for general life stuff, but certainly for sports performance and longevity, because those things add up over time. Then, okay, are you making good deposits in the system? Are there real opportunities for rest? What do you know about your sleep, right? There's lots of athletes who are like, yeah, I sleep fine. I'm like, oh, really? Let me see some numbers. And they're garbage, right? Oh, I go to sleep at 11. I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I go to my regular job. Then I train jujitsu 2 hours a night. And you can get away with that kind of shit for actually a while. But eventually the debt collector comes calling, right? And so then it's like, okay, how do I really want to distribute my energy? Is this the most effective use of my time? And you notice mostly what I'm giving you right now are questions. And that's because that's the first part that's most important, is not for me to throw protocols at you. It's for you to start asking yourself questions like, damn, what is stressing me? Do I go to bed on time? Learning to look is the first most important thing. What's the question? What are the questions I have to ask? Because if you don't even have a question to ask, then having some solution that I throw out over a podcast, it doesn't mean a thing, right? So first of all is like identifying your problems, right? Learning how to pay attention. Wait, do I really have some purposeful way I'm resting? Do I eat well? Do I eat in a way that supports my body rejuvenating itself from these outputs? Do I have a way that I move or condition my structure that's not on the mat? Right. So a lot of jujitsu players think the answer for jujitsu is more jujitsu. Now, if you're competing, especially at a advanced or an elite level, a lot of skill training is required. No question about it. But if you're not doing something in a formal movement environment where there's strength and conditioning to build robustness of qualities and for you to identify movement deficits before they show up in the performance environment, you're missing. Now, what are the ways to do that? It's infinite. I like to start with what is accessible. So, what could you do at your house? What is time found? What can you do? Do you have a pull up bar in your doorway? Every time you walk by it, hang for 20 seconds and start figuring. You might figure out, like, damn, my right shoulder is a lot tighter than my left shoulder. It doesn't hurt. I haven't noticed it at jujitsu yet, but I noticed it's tighter. And that doesn't mean don't do jujitsu or do more stuff with your right arm. It just means now you have better information. That's it. And that's the first step, is improve the quality of the information that you're getting from your body and your mind. So in the book, I split those up into three categories: mind, movement, and matter. Mind is about stress, right? How do I manage stress, and what are both the indicators that I have and the tools that I have to manage that? Movement, how well does my body move through space? Can I move me lots of different ways? And can I move stuff in lots of different ways? And how do I know? And then matter, which is about chemistry. Do I know about my physiology? Am I getting good sleep? Is my body composition decent, at least, right? Do I have good aerobic conditioning? Those kind of things are really fundamental. And when I work with jujitsu players to do strength and conditioning, what we end up finding out a lot is they don't know those things. And even before that, they don't know that they're important, right? Aerobic conditioning is probably one of the biggest missing pieces that I see in all of jujitsu, because people think being conditioned on the mat is the same thing as being aerobically fit, and they're not. But being aerobically fit will help you become more conditioned, but not vice versa. And it will preserve your capacity to be on the mat and heal faster long term. So, to summarize all of that, manage your stress more effectively, move your body in an organized way against resistance. Kettlebells, bands, dumbbells, barbells, medicine balls, body weight only, yoga. Find what works with the time you have in your life. And then make sure you're in good shape and you go to bed on time. Going to bed on time. Make sure you stay relatively lean. Make sure your heart and lungs work well. If you do all of those things to some degree, that will start moving the needle in the right direction. Of course, all of this is detailed in my book, but you can go to my Substack and read about the nuts and bolts of this stuff for free first if you want to, for sure.
The cool thing is too, is like the low hanging fruit is really, I feel like for the longest time I would ignore that. And I think a lot of other people that listen are the same way. Like you're like, oh yeah, of course sleep is important. Oh yeah, I know hydration, nutrition are important, but they don't give it its its due effort, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
they don't actually try it, and it's so effective when you actually start like checking off these blocks.
Well, I think part of that is because often when these things are communicated to, whether it's jujitsu players or whomever, the types of expectations that we set for when the difference will be felt is poor. So we say, oh, hydrate, eat better, go to sleep. And human beings were really good at feeling differences in days, but we're not very good at feeling differences in months or years. And that's where biology happens. It happens really slow, right? The good stuff happens really slow. And so, okay, you go hydrate every day and you eat a little bit better. You're not going to notice that in a week
Mhm.
unless it was total dog shit before, right?
Mhm.
When you'll notice it is in like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. a year. And then you look back and you go, man, oh man, when we used to do Shark Tank, I would get blown out even if I was winning. I'd be sore for like 5 days. Now we did it. I was still sore, but only for a day or two. And you're like, now I see. So that kind of thing, we always see it in retrospect. It's very difficult, or like long-term retrospect, it's very difficult to feel the difference in hydration after a day. Like, oh, I added electrolytes to my water for 2 days. It's like, man, you're not going to feel that yet.
Mm.
Right. So that's the difficult part.
It's so effective. I've been doing the breathing thing at work because obviously police work just has like this inherent, like I think a lot of cops don't even notice it, but there's just this like moderate to mild level stress that just like sits on your shoulders the entire shift, whether you're on a hot call or not, it's just there. And it took me a long time to become aware of that. And so now I do the breathing thing where I do the basically the physiological sigh periodically throughout my shift. And it's amazing how much effect that's had on. Um, I'm not a scientist. I didn't do a controlled study on it, but tracking, you wear the Whoop band is just kind of like a guide as a point of reference. I don't really like swear by it, but seeing how my HRV responds when I do those things, seeing how my sleep quality improves when I do those things. And just throughout the day, I can look at and measure an approximation to itself. I don't know how accurate it is, but I can see it improving against itself, right? The data improving against itself from day to day is, like you said, it's a slow burn, but it continues to get better. And if I don't do it, I can tell when I go home. If I go a whole shift and I forget to do that, um, I feel it when I come home, take my gear off. It takes me twice as long to calm down and go to bed, which then affects my sleep quality that night. And then when I track my metrics the next morning, I didn't get as much deep sleep or REM sleep. And then I feel like crap the next day already going into it. So it's amazing how much the low hanging fruit, how powerful that is. And I feel like everybody's looking for the quick fix. What supplements can I take? What protocol can I follow that'll just immediately make me feel like a world champ? Oh, maybe I need testosterone. Maybe I need, something else. And it's like those things have a place depending on your situation. But what you're saying is so valuable. Like, I mean, asking yourself those questions and making the adjustments, and you don't have to do them all at once either.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't do them all at once, right? You should try um, one or two things at a time and see what the effect is. And yeah, it makes me happy to hear that you're doing this breathing stuff. And my parents are both retired police officers, and I work with law enforcement, first responder quite a bit. And one thing that's true, you tend to feel it because the demands of the job are more intense. But what happens with humans in general is that low load of stress, it creeps up on us, and we
Mhm.
don't really notice it until the moment, right? And that's why I sort of use this check engine like analogy in general, because what ends up happening is people become task focused. We get oriented towards what are the things that we need to get done, and the thermostat will stay 90, but we won't notice that it's hot anymore, basically, right? We'll just ignore that the light's on and continue to drive because the vehicle hasn't shut off yet. And there are definitely times where that's appropriate, kind of like I said at the beginning. If you're a grappler and you can't ignore discomfort, you're not going to grapple for very long. It's all uncomfortable, especially when you first start and you have somebody, smearing your nose sideways with their shoulder. It's just not comfortable. But over time, you just get accustomed to the fact that this is just how this feels, right? It's just normal. And it doesn't register. This happens in lots of domains with people, right? We get used to how things feel. That's just how my shoulder feels. My neck's just like that. I just don't sleep well, right? And there are times when that's necessary. However, if gone unchecked, what will happen is performance will decline and eventually this system will fail. Now, does that mean you'll just shut off? Not necessarily. In first responder fields, sometimes it does. Sometimes the stress catches up and people have random heart attacks and shit, right? It happens, it's real. But in jujitsu, what it looks like is people get staph more often, people get ringworm more often, people can't get rid of elbow pain for like a year. I tweaked my knee again. I pulled my hamstring again. I popped my calf. I came back from popping my calf. I popped my shoulder. Now my neck hurts. And now I'm just, oh, let me get that Wolverine stack, right? Not really thinking about all the things in the background that are keeping me, that are preventing my natural resources from doing their job. So we're always playing this back and forth between like, hey, we're participating in something that is inherently stressful and uncomfortable. That's the sport. No way around it. And at the same time, what systems do I have in place to let me know things are trending in the wrong direction and I need to do something slightly different or adjust my approach? It might not even be that different. It might be one small thing. Like you said, oh, I do this physiological side. It literally might be like I foam roll 5 minutes after I am done training for the night and get all my stuff to relax before I try to go home and go to bed after jujitsu class. And
Yeah, that.
sometimes
Oh,
those kind
sorry.
of small things, sorry, have that
No,
cascade
you're good.
response where it's like, oh, now I'm more relaxed before I get in bed because my hips don't hurt. Then I sleep better. Then I get up next day. I have more energy. I go to work. I'm not as tired when I go to jujitsu. So I have better training. I relax better after training. And then those things accumulate over time, the same way they accumulate negatively in the other direction.
Yeah, well, I apologize. What I was going to say was like, yeah, that was kind of like what I was looking for in the sense of when I asked the question. I wish there was some magic. Like, I get in my little, what is it, Batman, the Lazarus chamber, and I'm like, get out. I'm like, oh my God, I can feel my knees right. And like, my knees don't pop whenever I do a squat or, do a shot on the mat or whatever. But something you brought up, which I found interesting, I know we covered it quite a bit with, you and Randy talking about it, is like the distraction and the stressors outside of jujitsu can lead to bad things happening, not necessarily, like catastrophic injury, but like, your training session's going to suffer from that. You got, one of the things we talked about in the military is like, any of the outside factors that are going to stress you out are going to affect what you do. So like, problems at home, financial problems, stuff like that is going to affect you in ways you don't realize. And especially the part where you brought up the slow burn, you don't notice the temperature is 90 until like, basically you have like heat exhaustion at that point because it's just
Mm-hmm.
you're used to it. I think that's something that is really, I think, ignored a lot, not just like professionally in our lives, but in sports and what we do as well, because it's
100%.
such a sneaking up like issue.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to have, different, to use a military analogy, right? To use different types of function checks, right? And so having function checks, and this is something I talk about when I talk to military or first responders, right? You do a function check on a piece of equipment that you're issued. That's just a checklist that makes sure that that piece of gear can do all the fundamental things that it should be able to do so that when it's called upon to work, you know that it will. And we have systems like these for really every piece of gear that's used, but we don't have one often for the body. And so when I work with athletes, and one that I offer in the book is sun salutation from yoga. And this is something that I have personally done every day for about 25 years. And it takes very little time, little space, no special expertise. But what it will allow you to do is to touch some fundamental shapes of your body, to connect those shapes together. So, can you generate rhythm, tempo, timing? What's your mobility from day to day? Can you breathe slow, smoothly, and evenly as you make these shapes, which is dialogue with your nervous system? Do you have friction to even doing it at all? So, for me, my first indicator is this thing that takes me 7 minutes that I've been doing for 25 years. If I wake up and I'm like, fuck sun salutation, I don't want to do it today. That's my first indicator to myself, like something's happening and it's happening in here. I need to pay close attention to my attitude because I might be on a slippery slope of being a jerk today. Maybe not, but it clues me into internal dialogue, right? And so that sun salutation is a really simple way to start to check in with the system that requires no technology. That's another reason I like it. You don't have to own anything, you don't have to buy anything. You just have to know what the shapes are and how you're supposed to breathe in them, and then start asking questions. So that's one of the basic entry points, and definitely things I do. I'm sure you guys have some sense. You know who DeAndre Corby is? Yeah. No, one of Greg's athletes. So he's a 80cc vet. He's going to be competing in the 77 kilo in upcoming CJI. Um, so DeAndre and I have been working together doing his strength and conditioning for like 5 years. And when he started working with me, he did sun salutation as a way to check in with his movement day to day. And then over time, what happened was he evolved his own checklist based on what made sense to him. But he still has one 5 years later that he uses every day, just as a, my T spine's a little stiff today. I might need to do, after wrestling practice, I might need to spend a little extra time on a foam roller. And it's just like all those little nuances that you pick up that accumulate over time. That's the stuff that ends up keeping you on the mat.
And it's impressive because DeAndre is a good example anyway, because he works a full-time job, or at least I don't, is he still after his big win?
No,
All right.
no, he's
Prior to that,
yeah, he bounced on that 9 to 5
um,
stuff.
I don't blame him. But prior to that, was working a full-time job at what, the Naval Yard, is that right?
Yeah, he was a submarine engineer.
Yeah. So he was working
Yeah.
full time and then training as a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete and competing at an elite level. So there had to be something going on. That's, to be honest with you, that's what kind of caught my attention were some of the social media content that Standard was putting out where you were talking about things and I was putting two and two together because I'm always trying to balance these two worlds, law enforcement and jiu-jitsu. And I teach defensive tactics at the department. I used to be on the tactical unit, and so it became too much being in the tactical unit, doing jiu-jitsu, being a cop. It became too much, and I had to drop something, and it wasn't going to be jiu-jitsu. So,
Of
but
course not.
yeah,
Come
so
on.
but knowing that he's competing at the high level, which I mean, we all know everybody's different, everybody's life experience, everybody's genetic makeup, everything is different. But like the fact that he's able or was able to sustain those things and go out there and beat people that were doing nothing but training jiu-jitsu, that was their livelihood. Something had to be unique about that. And in some of it
Well,
was the framework, but some of it I think was what you're talking about.
yeah, and I'll tell you, he's the most diligent athlete I've ever worked with. Like nobody else even close. He's the most disciplined human being in all fronts, and he's disciplined on everything. Like the way he makes his coffee is disciplined, right? The way he takes care of his car is disciplined. The way that he deals with his family is disciplined. The way that he trains jujitsu is disciplined. His strength and conditioning is disciplined. He's like my favorite guinea pig because I know whatever I write on the page will be done, period. And so if there's going to be a change or he needs a change, he'll either ask me first if the change is okay, or he'll tell me I need to change this because XYZ. So it's like, and he's diligent like that for years and years and years. And now look at what's happened, right? That
Mhm.
diligence has of course paid off, but he's for sure an incredibly self-aware athlete, and he requires, even though he's probably the most elite person that I work with in grappling, he requires the least amount of oversight because he has gone through this process of self-investigation, experimentation, figuring out what works for him. And what that's become for him in particular is now his strength and conditioning looks like a bunch of menu items. So here are your exercises with outcomes, and here are the ranges that you need to hit. And then he can alter it based on how he feels that day.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I mean, like discipline obviously is the name of the game and stuff like that, especially like you said already, I'm gonna beat it to death again. Trying to balance two jobs and compete at the largest or like the highest level is insane. And I mean, like we can all stand to be a little more disciplined. I feel, though I don't think anybody's super perfect there, me
Yeah.
especially, but no, it is very cool to hear stuff like that because it does kind of give hope to the guys who are working the full time. Like you can do it, you just have to be disciplined enough for it. But like Randy was saying, like what are some of the things you got to give up though? And jujitsu is not one of them for me either. It's the
Yeah.
the
Yeah, me
sunk
neither.
Yeah,
Me
was it the
neither.
sunk cost fallacy? I put too much money in this house to sell it now. Like, fuck
Yeah.
that. I'm keeping it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's just so much fun, right? It's like if you do it for a while, it's where all your friends are, right? So it's your community. It's the way that you sort of emotionally express yourself, right? So you get to move your body and it will match sort of the internal contents. It's play, right? There's nothing else where you just get to go and it's okay just to roughhouse full out with your friends. Like if you roughhouse with people on the pickleball court, they throw your ass out, right? But the whole point of jujitsu is literally just to roughhouse with your friends. Um, so it's really hard to give up. But I definitely have seen guys, plenty of guys come and go from my own school because they were unwilling to make adjustments. And I see more still who don't do things off the mat that support their on the mat success, and they wonder why they get sick really often, or why they get not even just injured but just tweaked. They're constantly tweaked. They don't really understand how to ask themselves questions about how to rest and recover. And so, of course, 99% of jujitsu players are pedestrian players, right? And have jobs. And so most of these people, they wake up in the morning and they drink coffee and or Celsius or whatever, some stimulant. Then they train really hard. Then they take a shower. They go to work all day long where they drink more coffee and Celsius all day to try to keep up with the energy demands. They don't eat in a way that supports having sufficient energy. They stare at screens or stay up too late, sleep poorly, wake up tired, and then do that same thing over and over again. And what something will give, usually it's not, I'm going to leave jujitsu. Usually it's just, all my shit hurts all the time while I do the thing I'm supposed to like. And that's different than I accept a level of discomfort that's inherent with playing the game of jujitsu. That's like, I'm not supporting my biology in a way that makes it possible for me to heal from my hobby, which seems silly to me. Now, if you don't have sufficient information, that's okay. Um, but I think starting with very, very basic things like going to bed on time um, are really accessible.
The lack of self-awareness amazes me that a lot of people have, whether it's jujitsu or whether it's law enforcement or whether it's just everyday people doing their thing. Um, and it's like, how do you get that light bulb to flip on? You know, because like you don't, we've all had a moment before we knew these things, before we were passionate and committed to jiu-jitsu or into fitness or into, there was a time in my life where I never would have picked up your book and read it. How do you get people to flip on that light bulb to actually give a shit about themselves enough to notice, I need to start doing better about sleep. I need to start doing better about hydration. I need to start doing better about stress management.
I mean, that's $1 million question.
Hmm.
Usually it's experience, and so either it's an experience that life delivers to you where things don't feel good and you're hurt all the time and you don't go, man, something's going to give here. Um, or somebody who's educated provides an experience where you can feel that. And the obvious analogy is in your first day of jujitsu, if you're a dude who's relatively physically capable, you think you can fight. And then somebody who weighs less than you can hold you down against your will. And then do it over and over and over again and never seem tired and break all your stuff and choke you unconscious. And you're like, shit, I don't know anything. And that kind of aha moment is better to have that come in the controlled environment of a jujitsu school than to have it happen out in the world.
Hmm.
But you can have the same aha out in the world by getting your ass kicked in the street. I would much rather have it on a soft, cushy mat with like an instructor who cares about me than out in the real world. Because in the real world, the consequences are more steep. It's the same thing with health. You can wait until all your stuff hurts, or you're sick all the time, or you're frustrated, or you have some real terrible buildup of coping mechanisms. Or maybe you listen to a podcast and you go, oh shit, that's me. I better start trying something different. So for somebody out there, this conversation may be their aha moment. It may be the moment where they go, oh man, that's me. I ignore a lot of that stuff. I do the same thing. I don't go to bed on time. I didn't realize that that was connected with how my joints feel. All right. Some because you just don't know what you don't know. And so that's my mission is to help people get access to that information before the moments where things fail catastrophically.
I mean, that's fair. Because I mean, like, I've met people too, like I work with. It is kind of interesting. Like, you talk about what's the experience. Some of them, it's been a doctor. Either you change this or you're not going to be hanging around for much longer, whether that's livelihood, whether it's, continue to train or just legitimately your heart's going to explode. Because, I mean, it was funny when you were talking about the guys who were like doing the loop of caffeine and whatever. Had a doc who, through the VA, and he was telling me like he's like, I have AFib. I'm like, holy shit, like how the hell do you have AFib? He's like, basically, I would just wake up, drink coffee, have 3 energy drinks every day, wouldn't go to sleep, repeat it, and now he's like going through, the medical process of trying to get that solved.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even 50. Like that's crazy to me. But I mean, but like you said, it's something that I guess he wasn't listening to his body, and finally the check engine light came on, and boy howdy, it was like throwing rod on cylinder three
Yeah,
at
and
that point.
you know what happens, I think, is there's a lack of information, but there's also, the foundational biological imperative that we have is not do jujitsu as long as possible. That's something that we choose. The foundational biological imperative is survive and replicate. And so our deepest processes that are wrapped around habit forming are for keep doing what you're doing so you can achieve the next task. And we'll compensate in whatever ways are necessary in order to keep doing that. And in fact, in my experience, the highest performing individuals are the best at compensating. They just often have the genetic robustness to sustain shitty behavior longer. So it doesn't show up as quickly, or at least they can accomplish more before the debt collector comes. I think, though, in regards to that biology, the other thing we do have as humans is we have conscious faculty. So we can start to become, once we're made aware of something, then we can go, wait, is this what I want? And what decisions can I make to push the system in the direction that I want from here? That's why when people ask me about protocols or supplements or whatever, it's always questions first. Because if you don't even know what questions to ask, if you don't even have the basic level of foundational awareness, which is based on questions, then the other stuff won't matter because you won't have truly identified the problem you're trying to solve. Right? It's like, well, what supplement is best? I'm like, for what? What are you trying to do? What problem do you have? Do you need more of that? And it's a lot of times like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. It's like, well, you have to figure out the target first. And then once you have something to aim at, then you can tell if you're getting closer to it or not. But if you have no target, then you're just doing stuff, right? And that's not the same thing.
Nah, it's not. But you know, yeah, I really do appreciate you coming on. We gotta wrap it up,
Yeah, no
unfortunately. But
worries. All
nah,
good.
it's been great, man. Before we head out, where can everybody find you? Where can they find, like your social media, your book, all this stuff? Where can they find you?
Social media is at the check engine light on Instagram. You can find me on Substack, checkenginelight.substack.com. And you can find my book at thecheckenginelightbook.com.
We'll actually put those links in the description. Hopefully, so
Awesome.
if you're listening to this, which you obviously are, go to the description. You got all the links in there. But Rob, really do appreciate you coming on the show today. It's been a great conversation.
My pleasure, gents.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome knowledge. Definitely check out his book. A lot of good content in there.
Absolutely. I need to do it myself, so I know what I've got I've got a trip I'm taking tomorrow. I think I might just is it available digitally?
It's not. Wait, it's on Kindle.
I got a Kindle Plus, so yes. All right.
Boom.
There
I
it
know what
is.
I'm doing on my flight. So, Rob, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been another episode of the Big Jiu Jitsu Show. I'm Rob,
I'm Randy.
and we'll catch you guys next time.